What's going on, guys? It's me, Zach, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. In this one, I'm going to go over the draft strategy I would take if given pick 10 through 12 in a 12-team half PPR draft. This will be the last video on the draft pick strategy videos that I've put out. I've put out a video for picks 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, and now lastly 10 through 12. So hopefully you guys have your drafts coming up this next weekend. I know this next weekend's the biggest draft weekend for everybody, and hopefully you have been able to take these videos into account and use them for your draft strategies going into your drafts. I had two of my three fantasy drafts this last season in terms of leagues that I take seriously throughout the course of the season, so I will be making a video at some point sort of going over which players I drafted and keep you guys updated as the season goes on in terms of how my teams are doing, so you guys can sort of see that hopefully I do know what I'm talking about. I don't want to speak too soon, it could always get bad, but yeah, again, once before I get into the video, I do want to just take a minute to thank you guys for all the support we've been getting. Last time I checked, we were at like 229 subscribers. I set a pretty ridiculous goal of hitting 300 by the start of the season, and I really do think we might get there. So, leading into that, I do want to say that if this is your first time on the channel, I want to thank you for stopping by and let you know that we do make 3 videos every week. And if you want to get more of those videos, or if you find any of these helpful, please do give us a like, comment if you have questions, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell so you get notifications when we put more videos out. But with that, let's get started with the video. So starting off with rounds 1 and 2, I do lean running back here if possible. I've found myself often leaving drafts with Mixon and then following that with Swift or Alvin Kamara. I think that Kamara is certainly a player that can be there for you in the early second round, and I don't even hate taking him in the first if you're that high on him. Unless somehow one of the top 3 wide receivers make it here, which I really don't see happening. I'm assuming that for everybody, the top 3 receivers on their board are Kupp, Jefferson, and Chase in whichever order. Think that you have to take a running back with your first spot. I know some people have found it pretty appealing to take Stephon Diggs here. I've even seen Kelsey at times, but I just really think that it's important to get a running back here because there is a chance that you don't get one in round 2, and that's where I'm okay taking a different position if you have to. So in round 2, if Mixon, Swift, and Kamara are all gone, I have been targeting Kelsey or Diggs, sort of depending upon how you want to build your roster out, but I'm also okay taking Aaron Jones here. I know Aaron Jones is a bit of a reach, but I'm really high on him this season, and I think that, again, it's just such an advantage to get those 2 running backs out of the way early. As we go forward, talking about the rest of the rounds here, you're going to find that there really aren't that many players after round 2 that I'm that high on at the running back position, especially if you have a later round draft pick, because you're not going to get a top 30 pick after this round 2 selection, so it's going to be really hard for you to find a good running back after that. So assuming you started with running back in the first 2 rounds, then I think it's pretty important for you to get your next 3 receivers in these next 3 rounds. The only caveat to that being, unless you can get a value on Kyle Pitts in round 3, I think Kyle Pitts, his ADP is about 32, so even if you have the 10th selection, that puts you at pick 34, so it's going to be hard for you to get him in the 3rd round, but I'm very okay taking Pitts here in the late 3rd. Otherwise, I'm targeting receivers that I've been extremely high on all season. This is exactly why I haven't been targeting a receiver in the 1st or 2nd round. It's because I'm so high on guys like Evans, Pittman, Higgins, Brown, Keenan, Mike Williams, DJ Moore, Sutton, Allen Robinson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, among others. There are plenty of receivers here that we love in these middle rounds. I didn't name all of them, and I'm sure you have some you love as well, but I think it's pretty clear that most of the value to be had at the position is certainly in these middle rounds, and that's why I don't really want to draft them early. And that's because if I draft a receiver early, it's just hard for me to justify taking more receivers in these rounds when I still don't have a running back. If you do need a running back after rounds 1 through 2, which could happen if you ended up with a Mixon Kelsey build to start, these are the running backs I like in rounds 3, 4, and 5. That's Zeke, James Conner, Travis Etienne, Breece Hall, and A.J. Dillon. I listed the respective rounds that I'm willing to take them in here, but in general, I really don't love the value on any of those guys, and some of them aren't even likely to be there at those picks, so I think that's why it's really important to me that you do draft 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, because I can't guarantee that you're going to get a value on any of those guys there, and you really do get into the running back dead zone really quick. I mean, it's always possible that a guy like James Conner slips to the end of the 3rd round, or Zeke slips to the end of the 3rd round, but it's just really hard for me to justify that much draft capital on a guy that I don't have any confidence in. So for that reason, I do lean heavier and heavier on just taking 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, even if it's not the best value, just because you're helping yourself avoid getting really bad value later, and you let yourself get the receivers that you love in the middle rounds. Moving on to rounds 6 through 9, this is always where I start to say that your draft position starts to matter quite a bit less because you do see a lot more variation in terms of where players go relative to their ADP, but I do think that you want to go into these 4 rounds with a plan. Generally entering these rounds, I want to make sure that I get my quarterback during these 4 rounds just because I think that there's a pretty huge drop-off after the guys that go in these rounds, and the guys that go earlier than that I'm not willing to take over one of those receivers that I mentioned, so I generally find myself taking Jalen Hurts or Kyler in round 6, or Russell or Dak in round 7. I did have a draft this last weekend where I tried to wait a little bit too much on quarterback, and now I have Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins because I'm not very comfortable with the position. I really don't love that, and it's just a really bad feeling, so I would certainly recommend, even if you have to reach a little bit to get the quarterback that you love, reaching by a round, getting Russ in round 6 or something. You're not going to hate your team for that, and it's just going to help you avoid a headache later on. I also will say that if you haven't drafted a tight end yet at this point entering round 6, you really shouldn't at all, just because I've talked about it many times, but there's sort of a tight end dead zone when you get to this point where there really aren't tight ends left that are going to help your team, and instead you're just taking a tight end when you could be getting a really high quality quarterback, really high quality running back, really high quality receiver here. There are plenty of running backs that I also tend to try and add to. This is normally where I try and get my RB3 and 4 here. I've been leaving so many of my drafts with Chase Edmonds, A.J. Dillon, Kareem Hunt, Tony Pollard, and Dameon Pierce. I love all of those guys. I think you can get all of them in this value range here. And in general, I would try to leave these 4 rounds with a quarterback, a receiver, and 2 running backs. I think it's really going to help set you up for the later rounds where you just can fill in depth and a lot of upside, but it should get you a really nice, well-rounded starting lineup, and maybe even a depth piece or 2 beyond that, depending upon your league size. Just a couple of other things I wanted to touch on regarding a late-round draft pick here. I think it's really common to start the draft with Diggs and Kelsey, and I've really just found that it just forces you to reach on running back in the middle rounds. You find yourself taking Ezekiel Elliott and Travis Etienne as your 2 running backs, and I don't think that gives you any much more of an edge than drafting A.J. Dillon and Chase Edmonds later, and it's just really hard to build out a competitive roster when you have to spend your 3rd and 4th round pick on running backs I don't love, especially in that running back dead zone. In 10-team leagues, I am more okay doing so because there's a better chance of one of those good running backs dropping to you in round 3, but still, I think it's really important for you to get 1 running back, and if you want to emphasize Kelsey, I think you can do that in a 10-team league, but it's so important to get good running backs with how scarce they are, and I really think you need to leave the first 2 rounds with a running back. And then the last thing I'll say is just to grab your guys. It's going to be a long wait between picks for you since you're picking at the end of a round, so you're going to have to wait up to 24 picks in between selections, so just don't be afraid to grab a player before their ADP. If you're picking a player 10 spots before they're supposed to go, but they're the next highest on your board, you should do it because you're not going to get them if you wait, and it's just, fantasy's a lot more fun if you have the guys that you like, so don't put yourself in a spot where you're trying to be too nitpicky with value and you end up not liking your team. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.